What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be following up from my ARC Trooper guide from the other day by now covering the other reinforcement, which is of course the BX Commando Droid. This guide is going to be in the same style as my normal hero guides, however with much less stuff to cover. I am going to try and keep it short and simple since I have already touched on some of this stuff over on the ARC Trooper guide. So getting straight into the base stats, and starting off they do have a pretty nice health pool for a reinforcement coming in at 350 HP. This is roughly in the middle of the aerial and enforcer classes, which is to be expected, so overall their health doesn't ever seem to be too much of an issue. They do also have the ability to completely regen their health as well, so unlike heroes you don't really need to worry too much if you do get down in the low hundreds. Just find some cover and you should quickly regen back to full health. Now their weapon of choice is the E5 blaster, which is already a base weapon for the Separatists. However, this version is actually modified with it being a little bit more suited to longer range. With a shot to the body, these things will deal anywhere from 21 to 49 damage per hit, with 21 being the stat from long range and 49 being up close. So obviously at medium range you're looking at something roughly in the middle. As for the headshots, they deal 39 damage from long range and 79 up close, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. That deals enough damage to quickly take out most classes in 2 shots, so that is my number one tip, which is always aim for the head. Now, because of their higher damage output, they do have a slightly slower rate of fire than the regular E5, although I don't know if I'd really say that it's slow when you compare it to some other weapons in the game, and so I have classed this as medium to slow since it's probably somewhere right in the middle. This blaster does have a really zoomed in ADS, which is really nicely suited to long range, and the spread is very small, so your accuracy shouldn't be too much of an issue at all. Now, to me the blaster does seem a little weak to be honest, and so I wouldn't be surprised if it does get a very slight buff in the coming weeks, so some of these stats may change by the time you're actually watching this video. So that is pretty much it for all of the base stats. All around they are pretty decent, and like I said, their blasters do seem a little weak at times. However, aiming for the head should definitely improve your chances of getting some quick kills. Now, moving on to their abilities, and they do have some really decent abilities, probably not quite as good as the ARC Trooper's abilities, but regardless, they are still very useful. Their L1 ability is called Smokescreen, and this causes you to throw down a smoke grenade right at your feet with a 30-second cooldown, which is a little too long in my opinion, but it can be very helpful, so I guess it would be a little overpowered if you could use it too often. It will stay active for roughly 7 seconds, and unlike Lando's smoke, this will actually remove your name tag through the smoke cloud, meaning you're much harder to spot, although around the edges of the cloud your name can still pop up, so keep that in mind when you are low on health. Now, this ability is great in combination with your L1R1 ability, which I will touch on in just a minute, and it is especially helpful to throw this down when you're low on health and need to make a last minute escape. Its only real downside is that the smoke cloud itself isn't actually very big compared to Lando's smoke, as well as the fact that you can't actually aim and throw it, as it will just be thrown at your feet. Moving on to the L1R1 ability, and this one is called Thermal Vision, which does have a 30-second cooldown as well, seeing as it is extremely powerful. As the name suggests, you will activate a thermal scanner that allows you to see enemies through walls within your area. This is just an estimate, as testing distance in this game is almost impossible, but going off some other abilities in the game that we know the distances for, it seems that this can roughly scan 20 to 25 meters in a 360 degree area. It will stay active for around 5 seconds, which is much shorter than the ARC Trooper version. However, it is also a constant scan, and so it does have its pros and cons when you compare it to the ARC Trooper. This ability is really good to get some situational awareness and predict where your enemies are coming from, and like I mentioned, it is also extremely useful in combination with your smoke screen, as it will obviously allow you to see through the smoke. Its only downside is that, like I mentioned, it won't stay active for as long as the ARC Trooper's version. Moving on to the R1 ability, and this one is called Vibro Sword, which has a very fast 1.5 second cooldown, which honestly almost feels instant in the heat of battle. This will cause you to whip out the Vibro Sword from your back and melee your enemies in very quick succession with the 3 hits available, and similar to Phasma's Staff Strikes, that 3rd hit will knock your enemies down, so it's always a good idea to try and land all 3 hits on enemy heroes. It deals anywhere from 66 to 82 damage per hit as far as I can tell, with the variations depending on whether you hit the enemy in the front or the back, or whether it's used against regular troopers or villains. However, this was pretty hard to test in arcade, so these stats may be slightly different in a multiplayer setting. So that is it for all of the Commando Droid's abilities. Now we're just going to quickly go through the star cards before heading into some general gameplay tips at the end. So I'm going to start with the 3 cards that I'd recommend using the most, and then I will still cover the other 2 cards as well, because to be honest they're all very useful in their own way. So the first card I'd recommend using is the Evasion star card. This one gives you 1 extra roll as well as a faster recharge time for your rolls as well, and the thing with the Commando Droid's roll is that it's actually a dodge when you aim it forward or back, so having 3 of these is definitely very useful. The second card I'd recommend is the Acquisition card, and this actually makes it so that when you get damaged by an enemy, it'll actually show a pop-up on your screen showing exactly where they are for up to 7 seconds when fully upgraded. This pretty much means that anyone who damages you and doesn't manage to get the kill before you get to safety is then going to be at a huge disadvantage because you will know exactly where they are for up to 7 seconds. The third card I'd recommend is the Desperation Star card, and this one makes it so that as you get damaged, your abilities will actually regenerate slightly faster, which for the BX Commando is very useful as they do have those 2 abilities with a 30-second cooldown, so any chance of reducing that is definitely very helpful. So those are the 3 cards I'd mainly recommend, although like I said, the other 2 are still very useful too, so I will quickly touch on them before we head into the gameplay tips. So the Stalker card will allow you to regen up to 55 HP per kill while the Thermal Vision ability is active, which is very useful in sticky situations. And like I said in the other guide, I would have included this in my main 3 cards, however, since the ability itself is only available for 10 seconds per every 40 seconds, it's not too often that this card comes into play, so it is a great card, but it is a little restricted by the cooldown of the Thermal Vision ability. As for the Interrogation card, this is another handy card that will actually reveal enemies on the minimap each time you get a kill with your Vibro Sword. This is another pretty decent card, but again, it's probably not quite as good as the others. It's not too often that you're going to get a melee kill and then instantly be able to look at the minimap and find another enemy to kill, because most of the time if you do get a melee kill, you're going to be getting shot at straight away, so it is a nice card if you're confident enough with the melee, but for me, it doesn't usually make it into my 3 card slots. So that is it for all of the star cards, and so lastly, I am just going to give a few quick little tips and strategies to try and put together with those cards and the stats that you've already learned, and hopefully it will all tie together and help you guys improve your gameplay. So the first tip I have to mention is to remember to always try and aim for the head like I mentioned earlier. The Commando Droid's blasters do seem to be a tad weak, and so aiming at the head is an easy way to fix that, as like I said, it will only take 2 to 3 shots to take out all regular classes and roughly 5 to 6 shots to take out pretty much any reinforcement, so aiming for the head is definitely a must with these guys. Another tip is to use that Vibro Sword whenever you do get close enough to use it. It has a pretty decent lunge on it, and with how quickly it can be used, you're very rarely going to be killed when you use it, so if you're in range, try and use it as much as possible. Speaking of the Vibro Sword, another tip is that this ability will absolutely melt enemy heroes and especially reinforcements as well. If you land all 3 hits on a Wookiee warrior, you'll have them knocked to the ground with barely any health left, and so it's always a very good idea to try and rush reinforcements and hit them with it whenever you can, as it's easily your best bet for survival. Like I mentioned, it is also extremely useful against heroes. If you can land all 3 hits or even just that 3rd hit and knock your enemy down, then there's a pretty good chance you're going to be able to get the kill, or at least allow one of your teammates to finish off the job regardless. Now, the last tip I'm going to give you guys is to make the most of those really big dodges that the Commando Droids have, and more specifically to always try and dodge forwards or backwards rather than side to side. Dodging forward is going to get you much further in a shorter amount of time than if you do just roll to the side, and you can still just quickly aim to the left or right, so if you do need to move laterally, it's still a good idea to quickly aim where you need to go and then just still dodge forward, as that forward dodge is easily the best dodge in the entire game. So that is going to do it for this one, guys. Hopefully some of these tips did help you guys out, as the BX Commando is extremely fun to use, and I think once we all get the hang of them, they will probably be up there with some of the best reinforcements in the game. If you did enjoy the video, guys, make sure to leave a like down below to help support the channel. Like I mentioned, I did also do a guide for the ARC Trooper a few days ago, so if you do want to check that one out, then there will be a card up in the top right, as well as a link on screen at the end of the video. If you are new to the channel, then feel free to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on any more Battlefront 2 videos or live streams. Thank you all so much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
Roger, roger.